everyone, Risa here with Crafty Whisper Mama ASMR. Thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate all of you and love you all. Today I'm doing a recording. No, it is only a voice recording, as this is not something I had planned on doing at all. However, I felt incredibly inspired to do this audio video after watching some of the other videos from some of the other ASMR artists, especially from watching Jeannie BASMR. And I don't know why I never thought of this before, because I know she has mentioned this in several previous videos, but her most recent video that I watched is one of the newer videos. She mentions again that her grandchildren call her BabaNini, and like I said, for some reason it just today clicked that I had a grandmother who passed away 2 summers ago, whom I was very, very close with. She helped raise my brothers and I along with my parents, but she played a very, very large role in my entire life up until she passed away. But I and myself and my brothers called her Baba. Now, she was from Argentina. She was actually my step-grandmother, but my entire life, she was my grandmother. It didn't matter if she was step or not, she was my grandmother. And the reason we called her Baba is, I know I'd mentioned that I am of Puerto Rican descent, but I also have Jewish descent, and she wanted me to call her Bubbie. Now, like I said, she grew up in Argentina and was raised Catholic when she came to the United States and married my grandfather when she was a very young adult. And they got married. He was Jewish, and she converted to Judaism. And Bubbie is a Jewish name for grandmother. However, as a baby, I am the oldest of her 3 grandchildren, started calling her Baba because I could not pronounce Bubbie for some reason when I was a baby, and Baba just stuck. So for my whole life and my brother's whole lives, like I said, really we still call her Baba even though she's passed. She was Baba, and when Jeannie had mentioned that in her one of her latest videos, it just clicked for me. And the reason it clicked also is not just the name, but my Baba had the most soothing voice. She had a fairly strong Argentinian accent, though she spoke English, she spoke English just fine. She spoke a few different languages, but she is the one whom I remember first feeling the ASMR tingles with, and it was more, she was just her voice was so relaxing and calm and gentle, and she used to tell my brothers and I stories, like different bedtime stories and children's stories that she made up pretty much on the fly. It was pretty incredible, and she was just so imaginative and creative, and these stories, once she told them, we would ask her to tell them again, and she would sometimes give different variations of the story, but we heard them so many times that we started as well, by heart, and would kind of try to add her little, 2 cents into the stories as well. But we would ask her over and over again, and I remember clear as day being a child and, spending the night there at her house, grandma's house, getting spoiled rotten. And I so vividly remember asking her over and over and over again just to keep telling those stories, and they would put me to sleep. But she would just keep reading them over and over, or she not reading them, she would just keep telling them over and over. Every time I would ask, or my brothers would ask. And I remember still to this day some of her stories, and I wanted to share one of them this evening with you all. I'm gonna try very hard not to tear up because, like I said, I was very close with her, and she was an amazing grandmother to my brothers and I. And I still consider her passing pretty recent. I don't even know if I think it's been almost exactly 2 years since she passed, but it seems like she was with us, yesterday. It's difficult, but I want her stories to live on and continue to be told because they were just so calming and wonderful. So today, or rather tonight's story, let me say tonight's Baba story, is called Johnny and Mary. Once upon a time, there was a little boy and a little girl by the names of Johnny and Mary. Johnny and Mary lived with their mommy and daddy in a small cottage right on the edge of the woods. Every day, either after school or on the weekends, they being Johnny and Mary, would go play just on the inside of the woods where they could still see their house and their mommy and daddy could still see them. And they loved it, and they were very close in age. I think only about 1 to 2 years age difference, so they were truly best friends growing up. And when they would go into those woods, they would gather flowers. There were beautiful wildflowers growing under the trees. And if you looked up while you were under these trees in the woods, you would see just a giant, beautiful canopy of wonder within these mystical leaves. You could see the sun shining just enough during the day that it provided a comfortable lighting to still enjoy yourself and the scenery. Aside from picking wildflowers, they would collect little sticks and examine little insects and watch closely to all of the little critters and creatures who lived within first and third grade, maybe first and fourth grade. So they had enough wherewithal to know what was right and what was wrong, and what could be dangerous and what would be safe. But one evening, when they were all home after they had eaten their delicious dinner, and after they had already gone to bed for the evening, they pretended to sleep. And they pretended to sleep and sleep and sleep until they knew that Mommy and Daddy had gone to sleep themselves. And on this night, Johnny and Mary somehow had the same idea and thoughts of taking this opportunity to venture into the woods on their own with just a couple of flashlights and a bag full of, and not even full of, a bag with a couple of apples, some carrots, a few crackers, and one large bottle of water. They got themselves up. They decided to keep their pajamas on, but put their rain boots on, as well as some heavy socks and a nice cozy jacket. This was in summertime. However, it could get a bit chilly, especially in the woods under all those trees at night. So, once Johnny and Mary were all packed up and had walked out to the tree line as they always did during the day, they turned their flashlights on, took a deep breath, smiled at one another, and headed into the woods. They were so excited and so enthralled by everything they saw and heard. They were not even the least bit scared, as they were full of excitement, and they could not believe all of the sights that they were seeing. Most of the sounds were pretty standard sounds for woodland animals and trees at night. They heard owls hooting. They heard bats flapping their wings as they hunted for their food. They heard some crickets chirping in the background and the croaks of a few old toads. They could hear the very relaxing rustles of the leaves on all of those trees. And eventually, once they had gotten a pretty good bit into the woods, they started feeling very sleepy. So Johnny suggested that they both sit down by one of the trees and lean against it for a short rest before heading back home. Well, both Johnny and Mary ended up falling asleep there against this big, beautiful tree. The breeze and the rustling, as well as the chirping and hooing in the background, was enough to put them right to sleep. They heard a small little squirrel scurrying across some leaves in the tree behind them, walking in different directions because that would make it more difficult for Mommy and Daddy to find them. Plus, it could be a bit dangerous not being able to see where they were going very well. Mommy and Daddy woke up in the middle of the night as they heard some very faint cries through their window. They quickly ran to Johnny and Mary's bedroom, where they found both beds empty with just a pillow and blanket left behind. They very quickly threw on their boots and jackets and rushed out the door, where they could hear the cries getting closer and closer. They knew the children were in the woods at this point, and of course assumed they had gotten lost. Daddy had a big flashlight, and Mommy had a headlamp. So together they ventured into the woods, deeper and deeper, until the cries became closer and closer. And before they knew it, they saw little Johnny and little Mary sitting there, crying and whimpering under the tree. The children were so happy and so excited and ecstatic to see their Mommy and Daddy. They did not even care if they were going to get into any kind of trouble or have any kind of punishment. They just wanted to be back home with their family, safe and sound. Mommy and Daddy comforted the children, told them everything would be okay and that they were safe, and the four of them headed safely out of the woods and back into their home. It was very, very late at night, and everybody had been having such a crazy evening that they were all pretty hyper at this point, just going off of adrenaline. So to calm them all down, Mommy made some warm tea with honey and cream, and also just a couple of slices of toast and jam. Daddy made some chicken noodle soup earlier in the evening, which he so much once again for joining